and the invitation to participate in the Africa Climate Summit hosted by the Kenyan government together with the AU Commission. Your Excellencies, the decision by the African Union General Assembly to host this event is in order to have a shared African vision regarding the climate crisis that is affecting the world, and mostly Mozambique, Africa. And looking specifically at Mozambique, the country is cyclically ravaged by the impacts of climate change. It's not what I've heard about. This is what we live. And as of February every year, and even until May, we suffer from the adverse effects of climate change. Since 2019, we have suffered from the cyclones Idai, Dineo, Freddy, amongst others. We had many natural storms and drought. Cyclone Freddy was extraordinary because it took longer time, more than 14 days, and we were affected twice by Cyclone Freddy because first affected us on the coast and then went back, and then it affected again Mozambique on its pathway to Malawi. We know that such disasters affect negatively populations in Mozambique, not only, but in other countries. Your Excellency, your President, the interventions that we've heard were exhaustive. Such statements try to explain what is climate change and what are the impacts of climate change. So I will not be repetitive, and I would like to be more objective and straightforward by sharing the experience of Mozambique with regard to climate change prevention, mitigation, and adaptation, and to emphasize the following. First, the conservation areas. 25% of the Mozambican territory is covered by parks, reserves, game parks, including marine protection areas. In this perspective, different actions were endeavored by the Mozambican government together with private partners and local communities in protecting these areas that have led to the reduction of poaching of rhinos, lions, as well as illegal logging. So why am I referring to cooperation of communities? Because very often we just talk at a high level, but those that are living those realities with the nature is communities. So they have to be collaborating with us in order to protect what are their livelihoods. I've also spoken about elephants. You know that the best gardener in the forest is the animal, specifically elephant, meaning that if we do not protect, for example, our animals, our gardens and our forests can be threatened seriously. Secondly, Mozambique hosts the most extensive Miombo forest, which is the largest ecosystemic system in the world, and it extends for more than 2,564 kilometers throughout the Zambezi Basin. As a way of protecting the Zambezi Basin that covers 8 countries from Southern Africa, last year we have held the regional conference under the leitmotif towards an integrated and sustainable management of Miombo, towards resilience to climate change and protection of the Great Zambezi. Thirdly, in Mozambique, the disaster risk management is governed by law, whereby it sets forth an integrated disaster risk management reduction, sustainable recovery of human resiliency, as well as infrastructural resiliency, ecosystemic resiliency, and climate change adaptation. I would like to emphasize that For example, for each construction work that occurs in Mozambique, they have to comply with the law in order to be considered as resilient construction works. Fourth, we have created disaster risk insurance in order to cater for situations of natural disasters and support of vulnerable groups. One of the efforts towards disaster risk management and reduction is by engaging local communities, as was also referred, but we are also prioritizing conservation agriculture. This is relevant in our strategy towards food security, and we promote the preservation of soils, soil quality, the preservation of water resources, the prevention of wildfires that led to deforestation and adverse effects from climate change. Moreover, the management of biomass energy, considering that our rural communities greatly rely on firewood. So we have been expanding rural electrification based on our national grid from the Cabora Bassa Dam and solar grids within the initiative Energy for All. Besides expanding the Cabora Bassa Dam that serves up some of the countries in Southern Africa, we are also prioritizing some hydroelectric projects such as Pandankua, as well as the Ntemani gas plant. And Ntemani will have around 400 megawatts, it will be the major one. Eighth, we have the territorial planning project. Through the territorial development and spatial planning. And this occurs because very often we see that people just build irregularly. And if we do not plan how we are going to build our urban spaces, we can lead or contribute towards erosion. Another aspect has to do with institutional and legal reforms based on the protection of biodiversity, including the reactivation of the main fines, and meaning that we have severed fines and penalties against poaching, related to poaching, as well as illegal logging. As a result of these institutional and legal reforms, Mozambique has been considered in the carbon credits, and Mozambique is the first African country to receive payments from the World Bank related to carbon trade. By strengthening the early warning system, we have implemented the program One District, One Weather Center. I'm just emphasizing what we're doing as a country because we cyclically suffer from adverse weather effects. So we have decided to strengthen our early warning systems so that communities are ready when those disasters strike us. This year we have also inaugurated the BRAP meteorology radar in the central part of our country in order to detect cyclones in a radius of 400 kilometers, and we are planning on setting up 2 additional radars in the northern and southern part of the country. Hence, we will be covering the whole country. We also adopted the Maputo Declaration regarding the integrated early warning system that fits into the national operational and strategic goals. We would also like to share that Mozambique also hosts the the SADC Humanitarian Operation Center, which is a center aiming at protection and prevention. Mozambique has an extensive coastline of around 2,700 kilometers, meaning that we should give special attention to the ocean as the regulator of temperature and climate in the planet. We have ratified the Marpol Convention of 1978 regarding sea pollution that also complements the national legislation regarding illegal fishing and the protection of marine diversity, meaning that if we do not protect our biodiversity, we are going to contribute towards negative impact. and negative impact of the environment, especially the oceans. Your Excellency, before I conclude, Your Excellency, RUTO, I would like to show my appreciation for this initiative, and we also would like to exhort all the leaders here to subscribe as a single voice the Nairobi Declaration regarding climate change, and shall we have a collective action towards it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. A round of applause again for President Nyusi. Let me now take this opportunity to give the floor to President Nana Akufo-Addo, the President of Ghana. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
President RUTO, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I join other speakers in applauding the Kenyan President, our host, President William Ruto, for his initiative in convening this summit, and thank him for his hospitality. A summit to define a common African position towards the deliberations of COP28 in Dubai is a highly commendable one, especially if it can help us define how we can mobilize our own resources to address this critical.
Baki hapa. Kiaka toa kamera yako endani. Unapita mbele. Kimbia mbele kiaka. Sawa.
Sasa niko na favor. Mko na clip yenye president akiingia hivi.
Akuja hivi side.
Celebrate mic ziliingia.
Bye.
International Convention Center. If you have never been to KICC, now you are getting a clear picture and a clear tour of how KICC and the environment looks like.
An aerial view.
An aerial view.
Yeah.
For free. Sometimes you can go there and you'll be charged, but this one is for free. So, ukiwa nyumbani, mambo ni matatu. KBC, KICC, na Climate Summit.
Yes.
All right. That's how we get it here.
Yes.
All right. We are still continuing the coverage. The president has just arrived at the convention center, Kenya House, and of course, it's going to be about deliberations and how things are going to pan out there. What should we look at? Charles, what should we look at this particular event that the president is going to be tackling at this particular point?
Thank you so much. I think I like the energy in the president, you know, and of course rallying, of course, his troops, you know, in ensuring that we are pushing through this climate change agenda and checking to see what we can also do internally, you know, ourselves to save ourselves from this particular challenge. So, you know, the question of cities, you know, is also quite key. Sometimes we forget about, you know, the impacts of climate change in the cities. And I think we need to think about, you know, how do we build in resilient, you know, cities, you know, how do we ensure that the population also within the cities, you know, is actually well cushioned against the impacts of climate change. You know, when it comes to water shortage, for example, you know, you realize that it hits first and foremost, you know, the urban areas, because, you know, the rivers, of course, will flow from the catchment areas, but that water is what is going to be piped, you know, coming into the cities and so on and so forth. And with our population increasing, realizing that there's a lot of urban, you know, rural-urban migration. Of course, people are coming to look for greener pastures, you know, in urban areas and so on and so forth. It's important that we think about how then we build, you know, resilient infrastructure in terms of our water systems and so on and so forth. Yeah, but again, coming back to finish the conversation around the just transition that you just talked about, you know, given Africa also has an opportunity to emit as we develop. It has an opportunity to take the same trajectory that was taken by the West. But because we're in a green revolution, we have an opportunity to take a different trajectory, and we can be able to utilize, of course, our green, you know, sources of energy. You know, we have solar for almost 12 hours in a day. That doesn't happen in the West, for example. We have geothermal potential, we have wind potential, like Dr. Kadambi indicated, and we can be able to tap these resources and take a different trajectory than what was taken by our compatriots from the West.
All right. So I'm told that the event has started, so I think it's just good enough for us just to cross over to KICC and take a listen to what's happening there. All right, straight to Kenya House.
All cabinet and principal secretaries present, members of the diplomatic corps, all distinguished guests, all protocols observed. Your Excellency, sir, with your permission, at this point, I would like to invite the Cabinet Secretary for Housing and Urban Development, Zakaria Njero, to lead us in the next part. Tumpigie makofi akija tafadhali. Welcome, sir.
Your Excellency, the President, all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to this auspicious event where we'll be discussing the operationalization of the Building Climate Resilient for the Urban Poor. We're all aware of the ever-increasing challenges of climate change, urbanization, and social inequalities, and this requires concerted effort in order to limit their negative impact on the vulnerable population. With the rapid growth in cities and urban areas, the number of urban poor population has been increasing, so that we have nearly 1 billion people living in informal settlement. The future being urban, building resilience and enhancing the adaptive capacity of the urban poor to recover from shocks and stresses is a major aspect to be integrated into the climate emergency discourses. This rapid urbanization has the benefit of providing us with unprecedented economic growth, connectivity, access to information, and conveniences of modern living. At the same time, however, we have the increasing pressure to ensure that we manage inequalities created by uneven application of resources in the provision of urban services. At a worst case, majority of the urban poor finds home in urban fragile ecosystems with climate-induced vulnerability. Hence, they live in perpetual state of disturbances. BRAP is an initiative. BRAP as an initiative is a commitment to ensure no one is left behind in the face of increasing fragile urban ecosystem. This program thus has the potential to be a beacon of hope, promising to transform the lives of the most vulnerable in our society with focus on cities and local governments. As we craft holistic solutions that integrate climate resilience, poverty alleviation, and sustainable urban development, I'd want to invite His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya, to share his conviction to the world on the importance of operationalizing this initiative, as well as launch the implementation of the Building Climate for the Urban Poor strategy for the 2023-2030. Welcome, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. Please, let's take our seats. Asante sana. Excellencies, honorable members, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Let me first, on behalf of the people and government of Kenya, welcome delegates who do not come from Kenya. Please feel at home while you are in Kenya. You know the reasons why you have to feel at home, because this is home anyway. I'm deeply honored to have this opportunity to warmly welcome each and every one of you to this event, where at last we bring into operation a critical flagship program of the high-level presidential initiative that Kenya launched 4 years ago at the UN Climate Summit in New York. At that summit, Kenya and Turkey had jointly led the discussion track on infrastructure, cities, and local action, and together with Brazil, developed and spearheaded the initiative on building resilience for the urban poor with technical support from the UN Habitat and our State Department for Housing and Urban Development is the designated focal point. And I want to thank the State Department for all the work they have done with us. And in fact, our design of the affordable housing program is informed to a great extent by the insights that we have acquired by associating with this program. Owing to the rapidly accelerating rates of urbanization globally, the population of poor people in our cities and urban areas has likewise grown. Consequently, over 1 billion people now live in informal settlements, and specifically in Kenya, we have 1,410 informal settlements around the country. Many people think when we talk about informal settlement, it's just Kibera and a few other places in Nairobi. That's not the case. And meaning that they lack the advantage of access to superior amenities and infrastructures that come with residing in cities and are therefore vulnerable to various shocks and stresses. In fact, with the governor of Nairobi, we were somewhere in Roysambu in Nairobi, and the paradox is that there are more children in informal settlements in Nairobi that do not go to school than in rural Kenya. It's a real paradox. Many people, when they think about cities, they think about Uhuru Highway and Kenyatta Avenue and Lavington and those parts of Nairobi. That is not the case. So this is reality. This is in addition to lacking both access and the capacity to utilize existing opportunities of self-advancement. The initiative to build resilience and enhance the adaptive capacity of the urban poor is a vital component that must be integrated into climate action and emergency response agenda. Due to their circumstances, the urban poor live and struggle for livelihoods in informal settlements, making them climate vulnerable and consistently sustainable to external shocks and disasters, as demonstrated in numerous disasters that happen in our informal settlements. By definition, the urban poor also lack the resources to invest in adaptations necessary for them to cope with the impacts of climate-related shocks and stresses. This vulnerability has far-reaching consequences on the lives and livelihoods of urban poor, and especially the youth and women and people living with disabilities in these informal settlements. It is for this reason that this program has been formulated as a timely initiative that enables states, especially in Africa, to implement effective interventions aimed at enhancing climate adaptation in the midst of explosive growth of urbanization and the increasing rate of climate-induced migration to urban poor. Whenever we are having this conversation, the conversation is not whether the world is urbanizing. In fact, the statement, the future is urban, is real. It is for us to decide what kind of urban we will have in the future. Whether it is one that is informal, that doesn't have amenities, that lacks water, that lacks sewer, that lacks all the amenities that are required for any dignified living in any part of the world, rural or urban, or whether we have a different scenario. And
It is therefore the concepts around this program that is dedicated to championing coordinated action to reduce urban vulnerability to climate change and at the same time mitigate the urban crisis in general. Globally, Kenya reports to the UN Secretary General's Climate Action Team, while nationally the State Department of Housing and Urban Development is the focal point, as I have already indicated. I invite all stakeholders with an interest in building more sustainable and inclusive urban areas to seriously consider the aims and purposes of this program and to support its efforts to ease the burden of climate change on the segments of our population that is least able to respond to it. And I'm very happy that we have many governors in our midst, because they manage, or you manage, municipalities, you manage townships, and some of the time these are the hotspots that we are discussing in these concepts. Adequate financing remains a primary weakness, which leaves many countries unprepared to confront the impacts of climate change, whose incidence is disproportionate in comparison with our documented emissions contribution, as well as their equally disproportionate adverse effects on the urban poor. I appeal to these stakeholders, including our development partners, to extend robust support to the implementation of this program and its activities, which include readiness programs in diverse areas like water and sanitation resilience, energy resilience, livelihoods and economic systems of the vulnerable residents, urban regeneration, including the reclamation of fragile ecosystems, resettlement of communities, and resilient urban spatial plans, green urban spaces, and developing resilience governance frameworks. I thank the leadership of the United Cities and local governments of Africa for mobilizing support for this program throughout our continent and championing its coming into operation. With the clarity of the objectives of this initiative and the dedication of the strong partners that we have, as well as the goodwill and commitment of all our stakeholders, I am confident that this program will succeed in delivering on its mandate. I take this opportunity to wish you productive engagement, and I am looking forward to a hybrid of ideas from different sectors and an open conversation, honest conversation on what interventions are we looking at. Critical infrastructure, critical services in cities, water, sanitation, electricity, roads, pathways, infrastructure, education infrastructure, health infrastructure. These are the critical services that are important, even in the context of climate change. We must be sensitive as to what climate change is doing to the provision and the ability of governments at all levels to make provisions for these services. And as I have said, we are having a very big conversation around finance and about resources and about investments. I remember having a conversation with the governor of Nairobi about garbage and how we need to monetize garbage, how we need to invest in collection, management, and making sure that garbage does not become a problem. In fact, we try and make it an opportunity. And I think so much is happening in that direction. And that will be extended to many of our large and medium cities in Kenya.
So these are conversations that we want to work with you, and I want to thank the UN agencies for being our partners, and you have my commitment, that of the government of Kenya, and I can speak with a measure of authority on behalf of our counties that we are all partners in this, and you can count on our partnership, our support, our collaboration, and we will make sure that this goes forward. I take this opportunity finally to wish you productive engagements, robust deliberations, and successful resolutions in all items covered in the sessions that will proceed after this, and await concrete recommendations on this program for integration into the Nairobi Leaders' Declaration and Call to Action. Unfortunately, I would have really wanted to sit in and listen to some of the good ideas that will be part of this conversation, but unfortunately I have to do some other business in the other side of the conference. But I have enough people who will make sure that we get the correct information and we do what we must as government at the national level with the support of government at the other levels. Thank you very much. My very best wishes.
Your Excellency, sir, maybe just before you exit the stage, just to unveil the Building Climate Resilience of the Urban Poor initiative. If I may kindly request that we sit down for the sake of the cameras as he's doing that, but we can give a round of applause as His Excellency now unveils that. Then we'll also have a brief photo opportunity with, there you go, with that unveiling. Thank you, Your Excellency. Also, as we allow His Excellency to exit, kindly let's not all leave. We still have some sessions that are going on, but that's the BRAP Implementation Strategy 2023 to 2030 launch. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And after he has left, we shall continue.
Thank you very much. We may all be seated. Our program continues. We get to the second segment of this important program. And you can cue the presentation. All right. As you've heard, this program, BRAP, was started in the year 2019. It's part of the UN Call for Action on Climate Change, where Kenya and Turkey and Brazil took an initiative to drive the issues of infrastructure, cities, and local governments. As part of that subtract, Kenya came up with this program of building climate resilience in the urban poor. And Brazil joined us, and Turkey went ahead to run with a program on transport. Since then, we have come up with the reporting architecture where, as a country, as His Excellency the President has just said, we report to the UN Secretary General's team on climate action, and at the national level, our State Department reports to His Excellency the President. But because our time is far much gone, and I know that you will be able to pick up a few of the issues as we go on, I would like to jump straight to the next session. And I'm going to moderate the next session where we have 5 speakers. And we will try and keep to the time allocated. So it is my great pleasure. It is my great pleasure to invite the Executive Director of the UN Habitat, Madam Maimuna Maud Sharif, to come and make her remarks. So let's put our hands together as she comes to give her remarks. Karibu Idi.
Thank you so much, PS. Your Excellency, President William Ruto, Honorable Zakaria Mawangi Nyeru, Cabinet Secretary for Land and Urban Development, Kenya, distinguished delegate, mayors, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to all of you. Habaria usubuhi. It's a great honor to be here at this panel together with such distinguished speakers, taking the next bold step towards operationalizing the Building Climate Resilient for the Urban Poor initiative. I extend my congratulations to the government of the Republic of Kenya for organizing such an excellent Africa Climate Summit. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegate, for short, BCRUP, not that I would like to do its short form, but it's BCRUU, or BRAP initiative, sits very well in your government mantra in Kenya of bottom-up economic transformation by directly addressing the climate change vulnerabilities of the poor living in urban areas. The timing to launch the next phase of operationalizing the BRAP initiative at this Africa Climate Summit is not only strategic, but also a clear statement that time for talk is over. It is time for action. As I have given 3 minutes, I would like to keep my intervention to 3 key commitments to operationalize the BRAP initiative. First, UN Habitat is committed to providing technical input to operationalize the BRAP initiative by sharing our vast amount of bespoke adaptation and resilient solutions for the most vulnerable communities. Our solution has been tested in over 20 countries across the globe, with a focus on least developed countries, and also small island developing states. This technical guidance will derive from our ongoing work in Kenya, Africa, and peer countries in relevant sectors of the BRAP initiative, such as waste management, as what the Excellency President mentioned just now. For instance, the Go Blue project in counties along the coastal counties of Kenya, planning, and our own resource revenue for sustainable and resilient communities. We will continue to offer technical support to housing and urban regeneration project in Kenya, such as the Mavoko Affordable Housing Project, which is ongoing now, and the Nairobi River Basin Regeneration Program, which is led personally by Your Excellency, Mr. President, and also the Deputy President, by spearheading the Nairobi Rivers Commission. Second, we are committed to institutionalizing adaptation and resilience for the most vulnerable urban poor through our programmatic work and also our programmatic approach. Through the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework, UNCDF, 2022 to 2026 for Kenya, BRAP became one of the joint programs for the Kenyan country office and the 4 other agencies. At the second session of the UN Habitat Assembly, Member States adopted a historic resolution on adequate housing for all, renewing their call to prioritize adequate housing and view housing as a human right for the first time since 1948, when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted. Last but not least, the partnership and network around BRAP to support mobilizing, finance, and bring the needs of the most vulnerable urban poor to the center stage of the global climate discourse. I'm happy to announce that UN Habitat will support the COP28 presidency in hosting the second iteration of the ministerial meeting on urbanization and climate change at COP28 in Dubai. And this ministerial meeting on urbanization and climate change will be the curtain raiser of the thematic Day on the Multi-Level Action, Urbanizations, Built Environment, and Transport at COP28. We definitely will bring the most vulnerable in our cities to the UNFCCC and COPs and the implementation of the Paris Agreement to the cities. We already launched the strategy. I think now is the time for us to work together. We were involved in the formulating of the strategy, and now to dissect the strategy and form a local action and come and also fundraise together to implement the program that is stated in the strategy plan. It is time to join forces to scale up our efforts and build resilience for the most vulnerable urban poor. You can count on me, you can count on UN Habitat. Thank you, Asante Sana.
Another round of applause for our ED. Thank you so much, ED. We now move quickly to the segment on partnerships. And our first partnership is with the United Cities and Local Governments of Africa. We are so glad to have you as our partner on this journey. About 2 months ago, we entered into an MOU where now BRAP has been made a regional issue. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to invite Jean-Pierre Elong Bassi, my good friend, to come and make his remarks. Karibu. Welcome.
Good morning. It's always very difficult to speak after the President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. RUTO. Is so eloquent, so engaged, that I'm being shy to address you at this moment. Honorable Cabinet Secretaries and Ministers here present, county governors, mayors, and leaders of local governments, development partners, civil society, informal settlement organization. I'm addressing you on behalf of the United Cities and Local Government of Africa, the umbrella organization of this fraternity, and the mouthpiece of almost 16,000 local government on the continent, representing 350 million people. So I'm a heavy weight in front of you. But let's start by recognizing that this Africa Climate Summit has been a landmark event, very well organized, and we are happy as the local government fraternity of the place and role that our local government community has gained in this summit. I hope that is one for all, that we will be local government part and parcel of any climate conversation. And I'm glad that, let's say, the poor part of our cities have been honored by the President of the Republic himself. And I hope that everybody knows that President RUTO is also the chair of the Committee of Head of State of the African Union on Climate Change. So this recognition of slum dwellers, informal settlement people by President RUTO means two things. First of all, I know that most of you know the background of this man. He is coming from informal settlement. And he has a promise, while I follow some of the event going on in Kenya, he made the promise that his leadership will bring about change in the living condition of the poor neighborhoods. And him championing BRAP means that he's keeping his word. And let us put our hand together to help realizing this promise. This my first comment. The second comment I have is that all this is stemming from a long journey that Kenya have been championing with Brazil. President RUTO said at the UN Habitat Assembly that he was joking. He wishes that COP28 will be the last COP. Why did he say so? Because he think we make statement, we take engagement, and we don't implement much. BRAP is about implementation. And when my sister Maimuna says everybody should join hands to help implement BRAP, we are totally dedicated to that. And UCLG Africa, because is the reality of people living on the ground, has been chosen by the African Ministerial Conference on Environment to be the host of the African Adaptation Initiative. The same way we offer to be the host of BRAP, because BRAP is the materialization of going from decision at the top level to implementation at the ground level. And we are county governments, local governments. We are the ground level where development is verified or doesn't exist. So our organization is totally committed to supporting this BRAP. And we make a promise here that since our regional office for East Africa is being established here in Nairobi, we will want that this regional office run with this BRAP so that the people out there in Matare Valley and the other counties that the president said will feel that beyond conferences, something is happening that will change their life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. Now we move to matters financing. We all know that to change the course of the urban poor, we need money. And to come and give us a bit of a perspective of where this money is going to come from, allow me to invite Eduardo Freitas, who is the Regional Manager, Africa Desk Division of Country Programming Green Climate Fund. Karibu. Let's give him a round of applause, please, as he comes.
Thank you, CS. First, let me start by thanking the Ministry of Lands, Public Works, Housing, and Urban Development, and PS for the invitation for the GCF to join this distinguished event. To Excellencies, colleagues, partners, distinguished guests, thank you for allowing me to speak a few minutes. I feel like the second shy person to be on the stage today. Mr. Embassy, you are eloquent as well. ED, very eloquent. And of course, His Excellency has been the first one to start putting me in a bit of a shy position, thinking I'll be on the stage right after this. So thank you very much. First of all, let me start by saying that we have been working with the UCLG. Since recently, we've approved a proposal that they requested to strengthen the climate capacities of local governments so that they can take their leadership role in planning investments for the GCF and expediting investments that the GCF can bring to the ground. This is a preparatory support work. We cannot stop there. We are working with UCLG already, thinking about BRAP, but the work has as end goal to bring investments to projects and programs. Today, what I wanted to do I'll be looking at a bit of my script here, but it's to make sure I don't forget any point about what the GCF has been looking at when it comes to urban resilience, because I want to stress the alignment between the GCF's discussions and BRAP's objectives and outcomes. A vast majority of cities in developing countries today still struggle to have regular and uninterrupted access to development and climate finance, to prioritize green and resilient development and projects, and most of all to understand how to optimally sequence and target interventions towards achieving the most ambitious and resilient climate impact for the urban poor, for their communities, and for societies at large. There is a huge gap between what is needed and what we're able to finance today. And more focus is needed on adaptation. We understand and we want to bring more focus on adaptation, particularly in LDCs and in SIDS. Partners with the GCF have assessed recently that there are areas where mature technologies exist and have the potential to bring and deliver high impact, cost-effective climate benefits at scale with local benefits as well. These areas include decarbonization of urban energy systems, scaling up distributed renewable energy, for instance, energy efficiency and building stock with retrofits, with construction of new green buildings and districts utilizing ecosystem-based adaptation, compact and resilient urban development with integrated planning and investments to avoid or reduce the need of transportation demand, to integrate ecosystem-based approach into urban planning, and circular urban economy, shifting away from the current take, make, waste urban economies of today. These are just a few of these paradigm-shifting pathways that we want to invest in. But barriers to achieving these objectives exist. These include or range from lack of enabling policy frameworks, integrated policy and planning and systems, and institutional and technical capacities, lack of structures for upfront funding to cover project preparation costs, limited support to fostering new business, technologies, financing structures, the increased perceived risk-reward profile by project developers and financiers due to the large upfront investments and longer payback periods of low emission and climate resilient investments, lack of access to long-term finance at affordable rates and appropriate repayment schedules, supply of private institutional and commercial finance, knowledge and performance data associated with low emission, climate resilient urban infrastructure, limiting potential for replication and scale. The GCF wants to help remove many of these barriers. Some of the work, as I was saying, we have started with readiness investments with UCLG. We have partnerships with UN Habitat. We're happy to discuss today with Commonwealth how we can partner as a global network to remove these barriers on the institutional, the planning, on the technical institutional capacities, on the modeling side, on capacity to develop pipelines of investments, but first and foremost, capacity to develop, sequence, prioritize investments that the GCF can make so that we can bring money to the ground and to projects. We're committed to doing that. UCOG is one example. Through readiness, we are also launching this month a methodology that we believe will help project developers, communities, partners to expedite the presentation of a concept note for the GCF. There are steps we believe that can be streamlined and expedited, so we were happy to launch that here at this event as well. And we are committed to moving forward. Together with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Freitas. And to bring to an end this session on partnerships, allow me to invite Dr. Ruth Katumuri. She's the Senior Director, Economic, Youth and Sustainable Development, Commonwealth Secretariat. Karibu. Let's give her a round of applause.
Good morning, everybody, and karibu, asante sana. This is my third visit to Kenya, and every time I come here, in about a year and a half, I see how much Kenya is shining each time brighter. What I would like to talk to save time is just a few things. One is the mantra, my current mantra is the future is urban. By 2025, the number of people living in urban areas will exceed people living in urban areas. The majority of cities are being built in emerging economies and developing countries. But how do we ensure resilient, inclusive, smart, and sustainable cities? This is the stocktake, SDG stocktake. 2023 is the stocktake year for SDGs. If we have to achieve our SDGs, it can only be done by enhancing implementation of sustainable, resilient, and inclusive development in Africa. Underline, in Africa. Unless we do Africa, we cannot achieve our goals. So let me talk about a few partners. We've been working with B Group and UCLGA for the last 6 months, and we are making good progress already. I just want to highlight a few aspects of the Commonwealth which are relevant in this context. Firstly, the Commonwealth Universal Vulnerability Index, which has informed the forthcoming UN Multidimensional Vulnerability Index, very clearly shows that financing should be dependent on vulnerabilities of countries. The criteria have to change from outdated criteria of GDP per capita principles to say that it has to be based on vulnerabilities of countries to enable them to build resilience. So that's an initiative through which we have also launched a Commonwealth call for a new financial architecture, which feeds into that, working with all the other international institutions, the World Bank and IMF as well. Then I want to talk about our public, the climate work. We have two initiatives called the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub, which works with member countries, including in Africa. We have 21 countries from Africa who are members of the Commonwealth. We work closely by embedding our advisors in the country to give capacity building and technical assistance to enable them access global climate funds. That includes partnership with the GCF. And to date, we have been able to achieve about $310 million worth of funding for our countries directly. The other thing we launched at CHOGM, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting last year, is the Living Lands Charter. Now there again, there's lots of opportunities to work with Africa in terms of ensuring resilience for our countries. Then in the context of sustainable urbanization, this was a mandate that was launched at CHOGM 2022, and this is part of what we are trying to work to build that partnership, to work with our partners in a way, how do we achieve these goals together. And I also want to mention one other program that the Commonwealth does, which is a public debt management system. We're talking about financing. So if we focus on a few aspects of financing, debt used to be hidden under the table before. Nobody talked about the word debt because it wasn't fashionable to talk about debt. But today, we see that countries who are affected by climate change disasters, their debt levels are going up because they have to borrow money to increase to be able to recover, and that puts a huge debt burden on them. So how do we bring all these things together? So it has to be a range of financing instruments and mechanisms. So let me give a few examples of some of our other work. For Kenya in particular, we are also looking at not just Kenya, but generally we are also looking at national own source financing mechanisms. And that there are a few examples. The case of Kenya very strongly shows the diaspora investment would be a very good source of development financing that diaspora are interested to invest into Africa. The same way, even debt by doing fintech. Kenya is another leader in fintech. All these mechanisms, there can be processes for enabling own source revenue for Kenya, and the Meridian system also to monitor and manage the debt. So these are some of the instruments in tangible ways. But then these things we cannot do. Commonwealth can't come and do these things by itself in Kenya. But working together with B Group and other partners, we are making good progress already. You can see this is an example of that. and we have to complement and supplement and work together to implement our common goals. There will be challenges, and what are those challenges which we need to overcome? We have to develop criteria and mechanisms to be enabling, efficient, and achievable. And so we look forward to working with other new partners who are here today, as well as we see that the President, by personally getting involved in this work and launching this initiative, gives it commitment and further impetus. Now, there are two things that the President, he gives sound bites. Somebody I was talking to earlier today said, oh, then he should be a rapper.
Well, what you're just watching, it is at the Comesa grounds at the Kenyatta International Airport, not the Kenyatta International Airport, but the Kenyatta International Convention Center, which is the KICC. Mentioned that the JKI today will be a beehive of activities of the dignitaries. We expect them to leave, given that today it is the last day of the African Climate Summit. We do anticipate the Nairobi Declaration to be launched by none other than the President, who is also the chair of the Climate Change Summit of the African continent, in around 2 p.m. or so. We also do know that the President will have a closed-door meeting right now, which is having at the KICC amphitheater with the various heads of state, over 20 of them who came into the country to witness this historical moment. Now, to recap a little bit of what the President has just launched there, it was about the building climate resilience urban poor. He clearly stated that there are 1,400 informal settlements in the country, and they lack superior amenities as they are entitled to, given that the Constitution clearly stipulates that. The Climate Action clearly states that it needs to relook at the model of the urban poor institution as well. Now, this is what the President has been able to do so far at Kenya House for the better part of this particular morning. He has left that particular session into the capable hands of the Cabinet Secretary of Lands, that is Zachary Mwangi, and his PS as well, to carry on with the conversation, and that will also be included in the Nairobi Declaration at the end of the day. Now, we're still here with our guests this particular morning. You can see we still have the live images of the Kenyatta International Convention Center. Apologies, my dear guests. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Let me just take you live to Parliament, where we do understand there is a parliamentary session currently continuing at the Parliament grounds, where it will be a parliamentarians dialogue led by none other than the Speaker of the National Assembly, who is Moses Masika Wetangula. Moses Masika Wetangula will be joined by various legislators from Uganda, the Honorable Jacqueline Morgan and Honorable Sarah Al-Bazar from Egypt, and various other members of Parliament who will be joining the National Speaker. Now let's head over there and listen to the parliamentarians' dialogue that I hand over you to.
And in Kenya, as you've seen, that it's a very major role that has been played by the parliamentarians in getting the right legislations forward, which will start showing results in terms of attracting financing from the global community. Africa can build a strategic response that can put the local and the regional economies at the forefront, and can be a front runner in showing the world how sustainable growth and development can happen. We've heard from President RUTO yesterday about how he, along with the other heads of states of countries in Africa, are shaping the narrative around climate change, and as we move forward for the COP28 in Dubai. And I hope that from IRENA we can be a small contributor to supporting you in your interactions as we move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gauri Singh. Energy poverty is a matter that came up in speeches of leaders yesterday. Africa producing 56 gigawatts to be shared between 55 countries. And so the ambition to increase Africa's productivity to 200 gigawatts by 2030 is a resolution that we highly welcome. The next speaker is a politician. She's a green politician and she's wearing green. Honorable Babel Horn is the chair of the Global Renewables Congress. She's a former member of parliament of the German Bundestag. She has been a minister. She's the current commissioner for energy reform in Africa. And the only person who can beat her political record is the honorable speaker sitting behind me. Honorable Babel Horn, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And first, honorable colleagues, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the Speaker of the House because he invited us here. And this place, that's a very important one, because you are here, the parliamentarians, you are debating and you are deciding about the political framework and about the laws. And that's why you have a very, very important role, because parliamentarians are the bridge between the national level and the local level. And if we are not convincing the local level and install renewables on the local level, we will not be successful. So that's why you must bring your knowledge. What's about obstacles? What's about blockades on the local level? Bring this knowledge to the parliament, and then you can change the laws to be more successful in installing renewables. As I was told of, so I was a politician for more than 30 years, and I started as a town councillor. So that was very important for me, because I'm very close to the people. At the end, we must look and work for a better life for our population, for the people on the ground, you know. And after that, I went to the state level and was there 10 years minister and chair of the Green Parliamentarian Group, and at the end, 12 years in the national parliament. So I have experience from all levels, and that is not so bad, I would say. And 5 years ago, with some friends, we decided to start with the Global Renewable Forum, Global Renewable Congress, because we would like to support parliamentarians who have the goal of 100% renewables. And that's why I am working very close with Kende and other parliamentarians, because we would like to decide what can we do better, you know. So make practical work, make our homework, you know, and look for better situation. And when we have a look at the last years, we had some very important crises. We have not only the climate crisis, that's one, and we know about that, and the extreme weather and all the impacts, especially here in Africa. But we have other crises, and that was a COVID-19 pandemic and the Russian war in Ukraine. And both made clear that we have a problem with supply chains that disrupted, and we have a problem with increasing prices of energy and increasing prices of food. And in this time, more and more countries decided that's not so good to be so dependent on imports of fossil fuels, because it costs a lot. You must pay for it. So, and it's better to have this money inside your country, because sun and wind you have in every country. Sun and wind don't pay a bill, you know, don't give you a bill, you know. So you must use your sun and your wind a bit better to be more independent from fossil fuels and increasing prices. And that is the idea of the last years. And more states decided to invest in renewable energies because of that. And you have really a wonderful situation, and Kenny told about that, because you have such a lot of sun. We are doing that in Germany, but our sun is not that much like you have here in Germany, in Africa. So you have really a better chance. And that's what we see in the world. I studied mathematics and economy, and we have something like exponential functions. And that means they are going like this a long time, and then they are starting. And I think we are now at that starting point for renewables, to invest in renewables. And to me, I remember a picture, or two pictures, from the Fifth Avenue in New York, Easter Monday. The first picture is from 1900, and you can see 100 horses-drawn carriages, and only one car. And 13 years later, in 913, the same place, the same Easter Monday, the same date, 13 years later, you could see 100 cars and only one horse-drawn carriages. So in 13 years, it changed. And that's where we are starting here now. We must make the change now. And I think we can do it. And that's why we decided to support you with our network of parliamentarians, because it's very important to make an exchange of ideas. What is going wrong in one country? What is going in the right direction? What can we learn from each other? And it's very important to work together in the parliament, if it's possible, with parliamentarians from other parties. As I was told, I'm from the Green Party, but now I'm working, or some years ago, the Minister of Economic Cooperation and Development from the Conservative Party asked me to be a special representative for energy in Africa from the Conservative Party as a Green. And now the Minister is from the Social Democrat Party. And I'm working together with them because we have a group of parliamentarians and politicians in Germany. They are all going ahead to support renewables. And that is very, very important, to work together cross-party, I would say. Yeah, that's why we are here, and that's why I'm very interested in the panels, because then we can talk about the details. And from my experience in the last 7 years as special representative of energy in Africa, so I am a bit the same like Kendi, sometimes parliamentarian, sometimes in a part of government. So I can tell something about what we can do. So that is very important. Do the homework, make the exchange of ideas, and thank you for inviting us here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Babel Horn. The civil society has been a key player in the climate conversation. The Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance has, in the past, mobilized and organized members of parliament, the latest being a parliamentarians' dialogue at Safari Park in Nairobi, and earlier on at Midrand in South Africa, an event that was opened by President William Ruto. The Executive Director of Pan-Africa Climate Justice Alliance, Mithika Mwenda, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, the Speaker of the Kenya National Assembly, Moses Wetangula, honorable members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen. I'm also privileged and honored to be here for this conversation on parliamentarians and their role they can play in this important summit and global dialogue on climate crisis. This parliament, where we are today, is a pace setter. In 2016, it adopted and passed one of the most revolutionary pioneer climate change law, which has gone to impact not only at African level, but globally, one of the rarest comprehensive climate laws in the world. And I can tell you we work with parliamentarians, and this did not come out of the executive. This was a rare effort, collaboration between members of parliament and the civil society. And that's how transformative the role of parliamentarians in initiating transformative changes which can impact and bring changes and the models which we are looking for in the climate-constrained world. This law now, as we speak now, is what we are trying to replicate across the African countries with Pan-African Parliament. And so I want really to applaud the Parliament of Kenya for this very innovative law. And we believe that we are going to work together with these members of parliament, because perhaps the solutions we have looked for more than 30 years really to address climate change, perhaps there is a sector which has not been really utilized and involved in this discourse, and those are the members of parliament. In May this year, we were in Midland, working with the Pan-African Parliament, bringing together parliamentarians across Africa under the auspices of Pan-African Parliamentarians Summit on Climate Policy and Equity, which was presided over by His Excellency President William RUTO, who has been a member of this parliament when that law was there, and also who is the chair of Committee of Heads of States and Governments on Climate Change of the African Union. And what we are seeing here is the national mobilization. And sitting here in this assembly today is really a testament by the government of Kenya, the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature, that we have decided that climate change is a priority. And now we are saying it is not on Kenya alone. I think we have a lot to share with our counterparts in other countries, and we need to walk the talk. For 30 years, the discourse on climate change has been top down. It has been, you know, the contestation between the North and the South. Who should do what, who should not do what, the blame game. I think the parliamentarians have an opportunity to change that narrative. And we want allies. We have been alone perhaps in Africa, and at global level, the parliamentarians from the former parliamentarians from the EU can tell you that there is very vibrant parliamentarians movement across the world. We do not have that in Africa. I think together with what we have done, for the past few days, we were at Safari Park really trying to internalize how to implement the declaration in South Africa. The day before yesterday, we were at KICC trying to do the same. I believe that that declaration, which is going to be delivered perhaps by Honorable Kadhambi at the plenary of the closing summit, will be an historical moment for parliamentarians in Africa now to have a seat at the discussions, and the beginning will be there. And I believe moving forward, not only to COP28, but even further, that parliamentarians in Africa will find a voice to sit together with other stakeholders as implementers of these critical decisions. Climate change, just as I conclude, is an existential threat to all of us. Parliamentarians play a very important role. When policies are passed at international level, climate change convention, the Paris Agreement, it ends there, and I know the Paris Agreement ended there. It can't be implemented in Kenya without passing through this parliament. And so the role of parliamentarians is not only to pass that law, but they must follow. They are the representatives of the people at the local level. The unique thing with the Paris Agreement, apart from the previous ones, is it is recognizing the devolved systems of government. It recognizes the people, and so that huge role in terms of implementation is very important. Providing oversight, and now when that translating those policies into laws is very important, and more importantly, allocating resources when they come, whether at international level or at national level. And we want to work together, including holding the executive accountable, and we are beginning the journey together. Let me mention that the Paris Agreement, or this meeting, this summit, is not an end in itself. In fact, it's a stop of the journey we are walking. There will be more processes, and I believe we shall work together. And thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Moses, and thank you, Honorable Kadhambi, for really organizing, and the chair of APCAN for really this momentous occasion. We believe that working together, avoiding fragmentation, will ensure that we have a very strong African position, strong African voice at international level, which has lacked for many years. I thank you.
Thank you, Pakja. Thank you for your solidarity. We'll be keen to ensure that there is continuity from the conversations in Midrand, Nairobi, and again in the National Assembly chamber, and that these resolutions will find their way to the General Assembly and to COP28. Yesterday, the United Nations Secretary General, in his speech, said that every citizen in this planet must have access to early warning systems. We have the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. We have the Regional Office for Africa, the Chief of the Regional Office for Africa, Mr. Amjad Abashar. Mr. Abashar, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Moderator. Good morning, everybody. First of all, let me thank the Honorable Speaker of the Kenyan National Assembly for giving me and my organization the privilege to say a few words to this distinguished members of the Parliament. The climate emergency, of course, is the biggest economic, social, and environmental threat facing the planet and humanity. I think my colleague there aptly put it as we have to adapt or die. Climate-related disasters have almost doubled compared to the previous 20 years. Our statistics here in Africa show that we have about 2 disasters a week. 90% of those are climate-related. These disasters are not necessarily the ones you see appallingly featured on screens, but they are often small, recurrent disasters that affect the livelihoods of communities and that at the local level. So obviously climate change is undermining our ability to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the goals of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. My organization, the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, is the custodian of the Sendai Framework and is actively working to address the climate emergency using an all-of-society approach. The Sendai Framework specifically asks national parliaments to advocate with their governments to support the creation of national resilience mechanisms and strengthen disaster risk reduction and prevention through investments in risk reduction strategies. More recently, earlier this year, there was a midterm review that was conducted of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, and it identified course corrections to address the systemic nature of risk. In other words, it underlines the interconnected nature of risk, and that we cannot deal with hazards or disasters in silos, but in a multi-hazard approach. Dealing with the systemic nature of risk, the midterm review of the Sendai Framework also showed that it's very important to develop multi-hazard early warning systems and increase global access to disaster data. It also highlighted the importance of engaging legislators to enhance both legal frameworks for disaster risk reduction and ensure that there are resources to back them. Moving forward, my office will promote the scaling up of global efforts to enhance national and local capacities and policies to avert and minimize loss and damage. UNDRR is the co-lead, as the moderator mentioned, of the Early Warnings for All global initiative, which calls for everyone on Earth to be protected from hazardous weather and climate-related events by 2027. In this regard, I have to mention that a number of early warning situation centers have been set up at the regional level and sub-regional level, at the African Union level, here in Nairobi at the ICPAC Climate Center, as well as in West Africa at the ECOWAS Center. So the progress is being made in that regard. So UNDRR is also promoting the scaling up of what is called the comprehensive risk management approach. Comprehensive risk management assists governments in pursuing integrated approaches, and importantly by breaking artificial institutional silos between disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. This is critical for development planning and should be integrated across both national and local DR strategies and national adaptation plans. So with this in mind, the Sendai framework does urge parliamentarians to prioritize climate action through the comprehensive risk management approach, not only to create policy, but also to allocate resources to ensure governments are well prepared to reduce risks. This includes the introduction of new or revised DRR legislation, the development of national and local strategies. I understand that this Kenya Parliament has recently adopted a disaster risk reduction bill, which is a very welcome news, and also to focus on increasing financial resources for disaster risk reduction budgets. So in order to help in a practical way parliamentarians in this process, we have created a practical toolkit that offers 10 specific actions to effectively shape and implement disaster risk reduction policy, legal, financial, and oversight frameworks. The toolkit calls for the integration of disaster risk reduction into development plans and initiatives that address climate change adaptation, by ensuring that it's also mainstreamed through both legislation and budgets. So as we move forward, it's crucial that we collectively strive to implement and advocate for climate and disaster resilient policies and strategies that contribute to sustainable development, disaster risk reduction, climate adaptation, and climate mitigation. So I'd like to invite parliamentarians to put nature, people, lives, and livelihoods at the heart of climate action, to support policies that combat climate change, safeguard the environment, and create a sustainable and prosperous future for all people, including here, especially here in Africa. Thank you, moderator. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, allow me now to bring the politicians on board. We have a number of delegations, and in the customary parliamentary tradition, I'll read out the delegations. If I read out your country, you could stand, and then we can acknowledge you. In the Kenyan Parliament, we do not clap, and we do not make other unnatural sounds. We stomp. We stomp on it. So stomp on it when we call out the delegation. We have a delegation from Zambia. Zambia. Thank you, Honorable. We have a delegation from Uganda. Very strong delegation from Uganda. Very, very strong delegation from Uganda. You're welcome. We've got a delegation from Egypt. Egypt, you're welcome. You'll be taking the floor shortly. We've got a delegation from Mali. Mali has registered. I believe they're around. We've got a delegation from Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone. Yes, and indeed the president of Sierra Leone has been with us since the summit started. We've got a delegation from Guinea. Guinea, you are welcome. You're welcome. And for information, if you need translation services, there are certain, there's an area that is reserved for French speakers with the necessary translation devices. We've got a delegation from Namibia. Namibia, You're welcome. We've got a delegation from Nigeria. Nigeria, you are welcome. We've got a delegation from Gambia. The Gambia, welcome. We've got a delegation from South Sudan. South Sudan, you're welcome. We've got a delegation from Ghana. Ghana, you're welcome. Dr. Mafo will be moderating some of the sessions. We've got a delegation from the East Africa community, the EAC. You're welcome. And San Kok is back in this chamber. And Babu Owino is not here today. You're welcome from the EAC. We've got a delegation from the Africa Union and Pan-African Parliament. Members of the Pan-African Parliament, I saw Esther Passaris.
My friends, Lord, I see you in different locations around the world more than I see my own family. But I am concerned. I'm concerned that there is a lot of details we still need to work out. Heading from event to event doesn't leave us with a lot of constructive thinking time we desperately need to work.
Allow me to bring the chair of the Senate Departmental Committee that is concerned with matters climate change and environment, the Honorable Senator Methu. The floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, our moderator. Right Honorable Speaker, I'm used to Amazon Kingi. The Right Honorable Speaker, Moses Masika Wetangula, please allow me to address when standing because it is not customary for parliamentarians from Kenya to speak when they are seated. And I'm very grateful that I got an opportunity to speak for you. You know, I have a lot to learn from you. I tell you that when I become an accomplished legislator, I'll become Moses Wetangula. My name is John Methu. I am a senator from a county called Nyandarua. I am serving in the Senate, privileged to serve as the youngest senator. That is why I say that I have a lot to learn from Senator Speaker Moses Wetangula. I'll read something that myself and the team have put together. I'm deeply honored and privileged to stand before you today at this momentous event of the African Climate Summit Conference Parliamentarians Dialogue. On behalf of the Senate Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources, I extend to each of you a warm and heartfelt welcome to the Parliament of Kenya. We have gathered here from across the continent and beyond, representing diverse backgrounds, profession, and expertise, all united by a common purpose to address one of the most pressing challenges of our time, global climate crisis. As we embark on this crucial journey over the next few days, I wish to express my gratitude to each and every one of you for your commitment to creating a sustainable and resilient future for Africa. The African Climate Summit Conference comes at a pivotal juncture in our shared history. The impacts of climate change are not just looming over the horizon. They are affecting us now with devastating consequences for our ecosystems, economies, and the welfare and well-being of our communities. It is urgent to call for action that we cannot afford to ignore. Our gathering here signifies our collective determination to address these challenges head-on. Over the course of this conference, we will engage in thoughtful discussions, share innovative solutions, and forge partnerships that will pave way for a more sustainable and climate-resilient Africa. The issues before us are complex, but we are equipped with the requisite expertise and determination to find solutions. I want to acknowledge the invaluable contributions of all the experts, policy makers, activists, scientists, and advocates who have devoted their time and energy to shaping the agenda of this conference. Your dedication and passion inspires us all. Mr. Speaker, sir, listening to the commitments that were made by the head of state and governments at the summit yesterday, Africa has a moment of exploiting and seizing the opportunity for an African-led solution on climate change. As parliamentarians, therefore, we must stand up for our people. We must stand up for our continent. Resources must follow the intent shown by the heads of state and governments, and this would need the collective effort of all of us seated here today. The chair of the session mentioned that we need to do the laws that will follow the intent that was shown by the in the summit. Policies must align to the declarations that are made in this particular summit, and we are able to deal with the policies. I would like to challenge you, my fellow parliamentarians, to pursue the route of bringing up to date your respective climate change acts in your countries, so as to assist in dealing with the current challenges that we are facing and dealing with the climate change and its mitigation. The committee that I chair in the Senate, which is fully mandated to consider all legislation and bills touching on climate change, very recently was able to process and bring up to date a bill forwarded by my counterpart in the National Assembly, namely the Climate Change Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 42 of 2023. And the members of my committee, most of them are in this particular gathering. Honorable Speaker, you appreciate that the members of the Senate had, the members of that particular committee had less than 5 days to conclude their business, and they put their foot forward. I'm very proud of the members of the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources of the Senate that I chair. The bill which I urge you to emulate and made amendments to the existing Climate Change Act to ensure that we regulate carbon markets, align with international commitments, engage in a broader range, engage a broader range of stakeholders.
Young people. The prize engages the younger generation to rethink and reimagine the climate crisis. And today I'm beaming with happiness because I saw a couple of our alumni who are from Kenya and who have been able to use the funds of the prize to unlock and solve solutions in their own underprivileged communities. This year, why am I standing here? Because the COP28 presidency planted a seed to create the Youth Climate Champion portfolio to address the evident gap of meaningful youth participation in the COP process. The Youth Climate Champion role is a role dedicated to ensuring the inclusion of youth's voices and mainstreaming their meaningful participation and needs throughout all aspects of the COP28 process and the UAE presidency. But it makes me think, why are we late? It took us 28 years to think about including youth formally in the COP process, but over 60% of the world's population are below the age of 35. The math is clear. These are seeds that will deliver above par and will deliver above the business as usual. Now, considering the status quo of youth participation in climate action and previous COPs, the Youth Climate Champion role is not a straightforward role as it seems. A lot of watering, bright sunshine, and nurturing its seed is needed to make the Youth Climate Champion role bloom and continue. It's a collective effort through faith, patience, perseverance to make these flowers bloom. But I want to tell you something. You don't need to wait like the doom tree for 40 years. I'll tell you some of the fruits of the Youth Climate Champion role. We have launched already our International Youth Climate Delegates Program, 36 of which come from Africa. 10 are currently attending the Africa Climate Summit. There are 100 youth. It's a one-of-a-kind program to empower these delegates to participate in COP28 and beyond and engage in all processes. Side note, 78% come from SIDS and LDCs, and 72 of these youth have never been to COP before. The Youth Climate Champion partnered with Harvard to provide capacity building for hundreds of youth already. We launched our National Delegates Program in the UAE. We worked with UNFCCC on education pillars and capacity building as well, and the list goes on. But one of the fascinating things as well is the Youth Climate Champion is working on reforming the Conference of Youth, or what they call COI, policy input process to feed into the global statement, which will be represented and presented to leaders at COP28. Today, they're finalizing the Nairobi Declaration. One question you should ask, is there anything on youth in that declaration? Have youth been engaged? Is there youth inclusion? At COP28 in Dubai, you will experience a couple of new things. A transformative conference of youth experience for young people, a youth climate champion pavilion at the first of its kind at the heart of the Blue Zone, catering to young negotiators, ensuring inclusion, and another youth hub in the Green Zone that will welcome youth globally with domestic, regional, and international partners offering programming. But the Doom palm tree is not just about the fruit. The tree, or any tree, I think you all know, represents lasting legacy of strength, resilience, and durability. And legacy embodies the values and the virtues of selflessness and sacrifice. And that's part of a bit of my country's DNA. The seed of the Youth Climate Champion is young people's dreams. And this is what we're asking for. We hope that consecutive hosting countries of COP make youth inclusion part of their operating manual, part of their status quo. One that is the new normal, that has structures and policies to ensure youth inclusion remains continuous and mainstreamed. Thank you for watering the Youth Climate Champion seed. This will be a narrative in history, the blossoming of a heartwarming tale of a humble seed that grows into a magnificent tree of inclusion, of unity. Let us continue to nourish it with implementation and with action, not rhetoric. But it really requires patience, it requires persistence and hope. And I promise you, harvest time of this seed will be a blessing. You might just see the seeds, but I see the stem, and I see the living trunk, and I see the trees. Thank you so much, and asante.
Thank you very much, Minister. I'm now going to turn to Elizabeth Watuti, who is living proof of everything the Minister just said. Elizabeth, are you going to speak from the podium as well? Okay, over to you.
Thank you so much. I want to begin by saying that young people are the greatest assets that the African continent has. And young people can be everything and anything, provided we invest in their ideas, we invest in their solutions, and we invest in everything that they're bringing to shape and upscale Africa's green growth agenda. Before the start of this summit, we had a 3-day African Youth Climate Assembly, where young people from different parts across this continent came together to unite and amplify their voices as one. And they came together to showcase their ideas, because Africa is indeed rich of resources and ideas and solutions to address the climate crisis. We had a lot of innovations, ideas, and solutions from our young people across every part of this continent. And as part of the outcomes of the African Youth Climate Assembly, we also got an African Youth Climate Declaration. And the purpose of the declaration was for us to reduce the distance between the ideas and the innovations that we all have and that we are all talking about to execution, because we have to narrow that gap between our ideas, our innovations, and the executions. And it is our hope that, as Minister Sharma has asked regarding the declaration, where is the place for young people? And it is our hope that part of the key asks that we have put forward through the Youth Declaration are also going to feature into the Nairobi Declaration. And one of the key asks that young people put forward through this assembly is that we want to be systematically embedded, because this is the time when young people are no longer going to be conference attendees or watching from the sidelines, but they have proven that they are actually solution providers, and they are innovating and bringing ideas that are shaping and changing the face of our continent and driving Africa's green growth agenda. And at the same time, for the young people across the African continent, we have definitely redefined what climate action looks like. We have redefined how our ideas and the solutions we bring to the table can be able to be part and parcel of the solution. And we cannot balkanize youth under one blanket, because we have to bear in mind that African youths also face many more challenges, but at the same time, African youths are driving solutions at the local level, driving solutions at the regional level, and driving solutions worldwide. And I am here to vouch for African youth to make sure that they have a place and a space at the existing climate and decision-making frameworks. Right now, African youths are now more focused on being the drivers of sustainable change. And we have seen the demonstrations, even from the look at the Expo Center, where a lot of the young people that are exhibiting the solutions they're driving were also part of the African Youth Climate Assembly. Therefore, the policies and the commitments that will be adopted from both our Assembly and the Africa Climate Summit should be implemented at the national, regional, and global levels to meet the collective climate adaptation goals. And we have to make sure that as part of this summit, that we embrace the longevity of how we are embracing and engaging our future generations, because they definitely have a greater stake at this. And as part of our declaration, part of the key asks were also an intergenerational green investment fund that allows for young people to collectively continue to upscale their innovations and their solutions and their ideas to the scale that Africa needs to address the climate crisis. And we hope that as part of the outcomes of this summit, that these solutions we are bringing to the table, that our voices that we have united and amplified are going to be embraced as part of this summit. And to conclude, we all know that when the last tree has been cut down and the last fish has been caught and the last river poisoned, that's the only time we are going to realize that we cannot indeed eat money. And this is a proverb that reminds us of the need to make sure that we are preserving this planet for the generations to come, and that we are making sure that our generations are part and parcel of the decision-making frameworks. Thank you so much. And I would like to, since I have a few copies of the African Youth Climate Declaration, I'd like to request to kindly submit to the COP28 presidencies and also the UNFCCC, since these are the outcomes that we're driving through to COP28 and also to UNGA, because we have an entire roadmap that ensures that it's not just about being in the conferences, but it's about the actions that we take out there and on the ground. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much. And you're handing over your declaration to Simon and the Minister. Do you have a spare copy for Selwyn as well? Excellent. To get to the highest reaches of the UN. We have a wonderful late addition to our panel. I'm really pleased to introduce Priscilla Akachakpa from the Women's Environment Programme. Over to you. Thank you very much.
Excellencies, I stand here on behalf of the many African women and girls who are custodians of the land, nurturers of life, keepers of our communities, and keepers of knowledge, and wishes to inform this audience that we had a pre-summit to affirm our collective and steadfast commitment to protecting our continent, our countries, our communities, and our planet from the devastating effects of the climate crisis. I am here to demonstrate that the leadership of African women and to assert our presence in decision-making processes. We refuse to be constrained by colonial borders, and I'm here to declare and embrace Pan-Africanism values. We are profoundly worried about the loss of forests and communities in Congo, the conflicts in West Africa, sub-region, and the dreadful conditions of women and children in camps as a result of extreme weather events in Mozambique, Malawi, Kenya, and Nigeria, among others. We invoke the Ubuntu philosophy, and in my language, Ayatutuko no Kase, to remind ourselves and our leaders that the climate catastrophe and its interconnected challenges necessitate unity and solidarity. We stand together in our different identities, representing women from the hills and the mountains to the savannah and islands, women from agricultural to pastoral communities, women from government to civil society and academics, and women of all ages and differing abilities. On this day, we convey a clear and resounding message to African nations, the African Union and their linked institutions. The voices of African women should never be an afterthought. We refuse to be tokenized, used to garnish panels, or used to meet inclusiveness at quotas, because African women make up the majority of the population on this continent. Climate depends thoughts, decisions, and actions must be led by us, for us, and with us, rather than dedicated by businesses or so-called developed imperialist partners and their agencies. It is intolerable for African women's voices and agendas to be excluded and marginalized on their own soil by our own institutions. We gathered on the outskirts of this meeting to express our concerns and hold the global north and climate polluters accountable. African women are keeping a careful eye on them. Their only role in this summit should be to agree to carry out their responsibilities, providing their due share of grant funding and abstaining from supporting damaging market-based schemes in the name of climate solutions. The struggles of young women in island and island communities, women-scale farmers dealing with unpredictable weather patterns, women living with disabilities in the face of climate emergencies, and women living in urban communities are stark reminders of the impacts, losses, and damages that are being experienced on this continent. The voices of these communities must be central to the agenda of this climate summit. Importantly, we are here to claim and own our complex realities for those who believe that African women are helpless, victims waiting to be served. Yes, we're among the most affected by the climate issue, but we are also the architects of genuine, long-term, and gender-just climate solutions. As we move from Nairobi to COP28, we urge our leaders, and indeed the world leaders, to commit to putting African women's leadership at the center of climate action. Women are underrepresented in global climate change policy processes in Africa. African governments must actively encourage and promote women's participation and engagement in all elements of climate policy, from design to implementation and monitoring, and ensure that they're contextually relevant to their experience and lived realities. We also we demand climate finance in the form of grants and public funding, guided by the principles of collective but differentiated responsibilities. The establishment of a loss and damage fund to cover economic and non-economic losses and damages, and a stronger financial commitment during the global stocktake and new collective and quantified goal is what we're asking for. We reject forced solutions on our land that are aimed to generate private profit and legitimize the global north's lack of ambition in decreasing emissions. Carbon markets and geoengineering are bogus solutions that hurt our planet and people. Net zero is not true net zero. We call them to commit on delivering on the 2003 Maputo Declaration by allocating at least 10% of African countries' national budget to domestic agricultural financing. Only gender-just and Pan-African policies and solutions that protect indigenous farmers and traditional farmers' system from commoditization, the effects of climate change, and capture of multinational corporations, promoting industrial agriculture can ensure Africans' food and nutrition security. We call that involve African. We want our leaders to involve African individuals and communities actively and systematically in climate change awareness programs and climate activities to enhance community ownership of climate initiatives, particularly in adaptation, just transition, and catastrophic risk efforts. For the global north, we call on them to reduce your emissions by eliminating fossil fuels now. Contribute your fair share of grant and public funding rather than loans and private market-based finance. Remove yourself from the perspective of the colonial past. Multilateral spaces must embrace collaborative leadership concepts and put an end to the overt and covert control of the global north. Africa and other states from the global south have the right to equal decision-making in the international processes. We, African women, pledge to do everything in our power to free ourselves and our communities from the exploitation of existing economic and social institutions that have contributed to the difficulties we face today. Allow our voices to be heard, and let our actions serve as a light of hope for a more sustainable and just future for all. In solidarity, we stand with all African women who are not here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Priscilla. And just for the audience, we won't have time for a discussion, but we will keep going for a few more minutes because I think it's crucial also to hear from my good friend Selwyn, who's going to tell us what's going to happen at the UN General Assembly and the Climate Action Summit on the way to COP. Thank you, Selwyn. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Kate, and good morning to all of you. And first, let me extend congratulations to all of you as reflect on the outcomes of the summit for really ensuring that the world has clearly heard the priorities of Africa. It's heard from African civil society organizations, it's heard from African leaders, and it's heard from African young people as well. And the convening of this summit really comes at a critical juncture on the road to COP28, but also a critical juncture in our fight against the climate crisis. The reality is that we're way off track. Every indicator on climate is heading in the wrong direction. Global emissions are at their highest levels and they continue to rise. At a moment when the world should be reducing its production and use of fossil fuels, we're seeing massive expansion in fossil fuels, primarily led by countries in the G7 and other developed countries. The reality is that as we move close to the 1.5 degree goal of the Paris Agreement, impacts will rise, and we're already bearing witness to this. And these impacts are being disproportionately felt in countries and regions like Africa that have contributed the least to the climate crisis. So as the Secretary General clearly indicated yesterday, we have this enormous global challenge of significantly reducing greenhouse gas emissions. 20 countries account for 80% of global emissions. And we also need to urgently deliver climate justice to those on the front lines of the climate crisis. At this summit, we've clearly heard from Africa that its priority is to pursue an accelerated transition It's just an equitable transition to a renewable energy, climate resilient future. But in order to enable that pursuit and acceleration, it requires enabling conditions at the global level. Access to affordable finance at scale, fair trading arrangements, debt relief, access to technologies, reform of the international financial architecture, to name some of the priorities that have been expressed by many African leaders. So in a real sense, the ball is now in the court of many who showed up here over the course of these last few days and made these eloquent statements. It cannot be business as usual. Promises made must be promises kept. We in the United Nations and the Secretary General, he intends to hold everyone to account. And this is the premise for his Climate Ambition Summit on the 20th of September. He has invited all countries to participate. All countries have been invited to participate. But there is a price of entry. In his invitation to leaders, he has clearly defined, as he did yesterday, what he expects leaders to deliver. He expects the developed countries to honor their commitments on finance. He expects them to contribute to the replenishment of the Green Climate Fund. He expects all major economies, as he said yesterday, to fast forward their net zero commitments, to clearly identify how they intend to phase out fossil fuels and how they intend to deliver climate justice to those on the front lines of the climate crisis. He's established a deadline of September 7th, the next few days, for leaders and countries to respond to his letter of invitation. He's also extended an open invitation to the private sector and to financial institutions and to cities and regions. He's asked them to produce credible transition plans with interim targets, transition plans with targets that are aligned with the 1.5 degree goal of the Paris Agreement, targets that don't involve greenwashing, targets with fossil fuel phase-out plans, and as well as commitments to support a just and equitable transition. Those that have made or are able to meet this bar of entry will gain access to participate in the Secretary General's Climate Ambition Summit. And finally, I want to assure all of you that the voices of Africa, African leaders, African civil society, African young people will be heard at the Secretary General's Climate Ambition Summit. The priorities of Africa, President RUTO has been invited, and I was just discussing with Elizabeth. Elizabeth, of course, you are invited to the Secretary General's Climate Ambition Summit to really provide and ensure that the voices of African young people are heard at this important global gathering. So, as we reflect on this moment, as we reflect on this summit, it is absolutely clear that there's a lot of unfinished business. Africa has spoken, the world has listened, but now the world needs to act to deliver on Africa's priorities. I thank you.
Thank you, Selwyn, and thank you for that commitment to ensure that African voices are heard at the Climate Ambition Summit. Priscilla is already on the case for African women as well. So looking forward to seeing those of you that can make it in New York. You'll be happy to hear I'm not going to make a speech. I'm just going to make a couple of wrap-up comments. I just want to highlight one thing that Selwyn spoke about, which is transition plans. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the language, transition plans are about what you commit to do today in order to change what you were going to do over the next 5 years. We have very little time to halve global emissions, and indeed, as the speakers have said, the responsibility sits with the biggest polluters. But all of us need to think about commitments we can make today to change the trajectory over the next 5 years. And the COP28 will be about the global stock take, and the action track and the negotiations should come together. And I just want to echo something, because he's in the audience. Mo Ibrahim talked yesterday about the importance of governance. And we need fair, transparent, and fit-for-purpose governance at every level of implementation of the green transition. We need a whole-of-society mobilization, as we have heard from the speakers. Climate change is no longer a small issue on the menu of environmentalists and ministries of environment. It requires heads of state, ministers of finance, CEOs, village leaders, religious leaders, a whole of society mobilization to drive the ambition that we need. And I'm very much hoping that here today at the Africa Climate Summit, the African Union Declaration is going to provide a new standard in that whole of society mobilization for transition. So I would like you to give a round of applause to our speakers, and you'll be hearing more from them, I'm sure, over the coming months. And we're very much looking forward to handing back to the Kenyan government to share with us what has been achieved over the last few days. So thank you very much to our speakers, greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Distort our budget because the number of children we must feed in school has grown from 1.5 million to 4 million. When you divert that money, something else suffers. You are told yesterday in the summit there by none other than Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN, that the world is so inequitable that we have multilateral financial institutions running the world, lording over the world, with colonial archaic structures, where, as our president said, an African country borrowing from the World Bank, IMF, or all those institutions, you pay 10, 20 times higher than a poor European country. We want equity. And we want those who put Africa where we are to pay for it. Because human history must respect reparations for wrongdoing. Those who stole our gold, those who stole our timber, those who stole our everything must be brought to the table to talk about reparations. Because we are not suffering because of our wrongdoing. We are suffering because we are collateral damage to misconduct of others. And that is what, as legislators, you must not shy away from talking. Fidel Castro once told the Americans, we have your debts, yes, we owe you money, but we can't pay, won't pay, until there is justice, fairness, and equity. We probably will not be that extreme, because we are governed by international instruments of borrowing and lending and all this. Then you have the Paris Club that will call you to humiliate you and call you are a failing state. Then you have all manner of descriptions, highly indebted poor countries, emerging countries. Today you are emerging, tomorrow you are highly indebted and poor. You know, they sit in Washington and decide what tag to put on you as an African country. And the tag they put on you determines whether you access credit or not. So Africans must come together. Africans must speak one language, one voice to protect our continent from the ravages of climate change, but above all, from those who cause this climate change from other places that you suffer most. We had a sad story in this country, honorable members, in the last drought and food shortage, of a woman in Mombasa who had absolutely no food. And her children were there staring at her as a mother. And the children must eat something. So she put a pan on fire, put water, and put stones and started boiling.
Joma beyo, joma chungile, kiti yo mate, kendo gitero pinywa, anapoyo, anapako, anaera chien ma wango e dalawaka. Joma beyo, joma chungile, kiti yo mate, kendo gitero pinywa, anapoyo, anapako, jodala.
Naipenda Kenya yangu,
hakuna matata, hakuna matata.
Twakaribisha kwetu,
hakuna matata, hakuna matata.
Oh, nchi yenye baraka,
hakuna matata, hakuna matata.
Najivunia utulivu kweli twafurahia omorembe chanyogokera buya mono chisokoro chaito obosibore twabochengera
hakuna matata,
maisha kwetu. Hakuna matata. Hakuna matata.
Life began in Africa, as they say, and we exported life elsewhere. And so I feel it's important that the talk on climate change begins right here at home and we export it elsewhere.
This climate change conversation is very important for us as Africans. Of course, as been mentioned by everybody else, we are the ones bearing the biggest effect of it all. So we should be leading the conversation on how we can adapt, how we can mitigate, and how we can scale up and take advantage of the opportunities that are here in order for us to live better.
It's our time as Africa to take the lead. For the longest time, climate change has been put in the back burner. It's not been talked about as much. And Africa is the one who's feeling the most effects of this climate change that we're experiencing.
I accept that it is one thing to say what is possible and entirely another to make it happen. This summit is a moment to imagine a bold and radically affirmative African future. We do all that, but it doesn't count for much. But we do it anyway because we love this world, because it's our home. And that is why the conversation of North versus South must come to an end.
Ukichoka kwa yakini, kivuli wakimbilia. Ukiwa nayo imani, hewa safi takujia. Tena huku umeamini, matunda tapata pia. Tena huku umeamini, matunda tapata pia. Kiangazi kiingia, ni miti inazuia, tena hutusaidia.
Before we take our break? Okay, I'm told the video will come after. We will do our first plenary of the day so that we can have more voices and more faces in this conversation. Our next session will be on renewable energy, and it will be moderated by Dr. Joachim, Senior Policy Advisor.
Wakenya tuikuzeni.
So the panelists who will join Dr. Joachim are Gubas Gonul, Director, Country Engagement and Partnership at IRENA. He's already taken his position. The next panelist is Babel Horn, is already in position. Honorable Samuel Onugbo, former MP Nigeria. The Honorable, if you don't mind, you can cross over to the government side. That's the government side under normal circumstances. The Honorable Lawrence Songa. Lawrence Songa. The Honorable Jacqueline Amongin is already in position. Honorable Saha Al-Bazar is already in position. The Honorable Senator Wahome Wamatinga, Chair of the Energy Committee in the Kenyan Senate. So I hand over to Dr. Joaquin to moderate the next session.
Thank you, Honorable Kajwang, for graciously opening this session and inviting me to moderate the next session. I'm really honored to be here and to be the moderator. Cannot really believe I'm even sitting here now in this very special place in the House. I was asked to explain what we do where I come from. I am based in Berlin, Germany, and work for a German development organization, Brot für die Welt. We are a faith-based organization and the largest development organization in Germany and even in Europe. We work with partner organizations from civil society and churches in over 80 countries globally. And me, personally, I'm heading the energy work of Brot für die Welt and work on energy issues with civil society for a very long time. So I'm very pleased to be here and to be part of this conversation because, as my colleague Mitika from PACJA already said, I think when civil society and parliamentarians work together, really special, innovative and new pieces of legislation and partnerships can come into being. And it's really a great pleasure also to be part of this African Climate Summit, and I really see a lot of dynamics coming regarding renewable energy, and it's a great pleasure to see how Africa is standing up to drive a new agenda. Without further ado, I would like to take the opportunity to welcome our distinguished panelists who will all share insights now on the importance of renewable energy, but also the challenges of it and potentials for scaling up renewable energy deployment in Africa on the local and regional level especially. And we are particularly keen now in this session to understand what challenges and opportunities they see also from a global
What shall we do?
But when we look at Africa, the rollout of energy, renewable energy in the continent has not been at the desired pace to meet the needs of African countries. IRENA estimates that Africa needs around $70 billion annual investment up to 2030 for clean energy transformation and to keep up with the economic growth. Although Africa has 17% of the world population, it has only received 2% of the worldwide investment in renewable energy in the last 2 decades. And there are several reasons for that: the perceived or real risks for investment, regulatory environment, the capacities, skills available to support energy transition, or access to affordable financing to have this transition happen. And IRENA is working with several initiatives to support that energy transition. We have President RUTO 2 days ago launched a new initiative called Accelerated Partnership for Renewables in Africa. And energy transition has never been only for deploying renewables. It has also a much larger ripple effect for creating jobs, for stimulating economic growth, for creating resilient communities, and also to fueling green industrialization. Many of the speakers highlighted the importance of creating that value addition in the countries with the energy transition. And this initiative is very much focusing on those dimensions. And we are starting with the first cohort of 6 countries with high ambition for renewables, including Kenya, with this initiative, supported by Denmark, Germany, and United Arab Emirates, and several partners we work with. Also, another initiative we are starting at COP28. This is more about lives and livelihoods and how we can put people and communities in the center of energy transition, and how we can integrate those renewable energy solutions into health and agri-food value chains, creating value, stimulating economic activity, and help alleviating poverty. We have been closely working with the parliamentarians under the IRENA context. We have created platforms like Legislators Forum, Legislators Dialogue, having meetings, gatherings to hear from you, from the insights, and how we can promote renewables, because we consider parliaments and parliamentarians in the center of energy transition. They have a key role, and how we can create those structures to have a dialogue among parliamentarians, to share good practices, but also hear from you on the best way of taking forward energy transition discussions at the parliamentary context. And we are very much looking forward to deepening this dialogue.
Okay. Just to explain the system here, I'm sorry you were cut off now. We just implemented a timekeeping instrument here, which is this flashlight that I was just explaining how it works. It is green for the first 3 minutes that you are talking, right? And then after 3 minutes it turns yellow, and like 20 seconds before the 5 minutes that you have are up, it will turn red. Just for you to see, but I didn't explain that beforehand, so we'll give you a bit of time to finish your presentation. Sorry for cutting you off.
No problem. I was almost at the end of my intervention. I was just saying that we are very much looking forward to deepening cooperation with the parliaments and parliamentarians, because they are extremely important player in our discussions, and how we can promote and advance energy transition discussions in the parliament, and creating the right enabling frameworks and right initiatives is extremely important, and we value that cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gonu, for your input. We heard very well how important the role of renewable energy is for development, and for poverty eradication, energy access, and that renewable energies are becoming mainstream globally, but yet for Africa, more pace in the deployment of renewables needs to be developed, and people need to be put in the center of the transition. And I know that Honorable Bärbel Höhn puts that very often in the focus of her speeches, to put people in the center of the transition. So that leads me to her, and I welcome her to give her input now. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Joachim. Before I start with maybe my experience from Africa, I would like to tell you some data from Germany and the conclusion of that. So 2 years ago, we had a new federal government in Germany, and this government was very engaged with renewables. So they eliminated blockades and obstacles and bureaucracy, and we can now see the result because renewables are expanding. For example, in 2022, nearly 10 gigawatt were installed with the renewables in the last year in Germany. 10 gigawatt in 2022, and that's really a huge number. New installed renewable energies, most of them photovoltaic. And the first 8 months of this year till the end of August, 9.5 gigawatt were installed, photovoltaic, wind turbines, renewables. That means in this year we will have more than 10 gigawatt installed in Germany in 1 year of renewables. And that means that we had in the first 8 months of this year, 59% of our electricity mix is coming from renewables. And that's a big number because we produced about 300 terawatt hours in Germany in this 8 months. And that's a tremendous number. So what I would like to say, we are doing not enough. We must be more ambitious in Germany, but we are on track. And what I would like to say is that in some sectors we are doing nothing, and especially in the transport sector. I think it's very important if the minister of this sector is really interested and engaged, or if not, or if he is very close to the fossil industry and fossil vehicles. And we can see that in the transport sector. So that means, as conclusion, most important is the political will. The political will is most important, not only in Germany, but in all countries I visited. And when I worked here in Africa as special representative for energy in Africa, I visited 15 countries, and I think there are 3 very important points, and I would like to debate with you. What do you think about that? Are the really very important points? To my view, they are very important points. The first one is training. We need to train the people. We have the same problem in Germany. We have the same problem in every country. But we need vocational training, not only academic, but vocational training, praxis training. Experts that can install photovoltaic, experts that are really going to the ground, going to the households and are installing photovoltaic or wind turbines. We have in Germany something like the dual system, practical training in companies and added theoretical training in schools. And that was a good idea in Germany, but as I said, we need young people who are interested and work in the sector, and that means for the society that we must recognize that these professions are very important for the state, for the inhabitants. It's not only the academic professions, but also the very practical ones. Second, to me it's very important, when we are talking about renewables and decentralized renewables, we have to go to the ground. And the ground, there are the people, there are small and medium-sized companies, there are municipalities, there are cooperatives, and we have to work with them together, because one of the main points is good maintenance. When we are installing decentralized systems, it's not only the installation, but also the good maintenance and the sustainable operating system. And that's why we need the local entrepreneurs, that's why we need a local level, and that's why we need a bit knowledge, because we need also good quality of the hardware.
I'm sorry, the time is up, but of course I'm happy to give you another minute to finish your talk.
Maybe. Oh, okay, I was the first one. I have to learn about that. So only the last sentence, we have to look for financial systems that included all these ideas, especially of maintenance, because otherwise we will fail. And we can talk about these financial systems in the debate. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Bärbel Höhn. And since I also come from Germany, I can copy every point you made. I experienced as well in the photovoltaics industry how important it is now to train people to go to the ground and have different financial systems working. Thank you very much. Now we come further to honorable members of parliament from the African continent, and it's my pleasure and honor to invite Honorable Biyika Lawrence Songa. He is a member of parliament from Uganda and chair of the Climate Change Committee. The floor is yours, if you like.
Thank you very much, moderator. My name is Biyika Lawrence Songa, the chair of the Climate Change Committee in Uganda, and I'm happy that we have a big delegation here led by my deputy, Honorable Jacinta Atuto. They may stand. A big delegation from Uganda. Thank you. The three areas of my conversation. One is the focus of renewable energy and insight from my experience in Uganda. also replacing fossil fuel with renewable energy. Agenda 2030, declared on 25th September 2015, the SDG with 17 goals gave a boost to renewable energy, if only issues to do with governance policies on renewable energy are implemented. Especially SDG 7 depend on quantity and quality of energy, and they are very key to the development of a country, but also quality of life, whether you talk about education, health, water, sanitation, security, industrialization, and productivity. Uganda has a substantial amount of renewable energy and evenly distributed in the country. And this includes wind with a speed of 2 to 6 minutes per second, hydropower capacity of 4,100 megawatts, but only installed about 1,000 megawatts. We also have solar, the average of which is about 5.1 kilowatt hours per meter square, and also geothermal, about 450 megawatts, but not well developed. Biogas, annual yields of about 50 million tons, and also peat, although some people don't treat peat as a renewable, but others consider so, about 800 megawatts. And this is equivalent to about 250 tons of oil equivalent. And we have also the biomass, which is majorly used, about 90%, and with firewood of about 78.6%, charcoal 5.6%, crop residues of 4.7%, and cogeneration, renewable through cogeneration of about 1,650 megawatts. Now this is already a rich area for renewable energy in Uganda. But all this potential, if well developed, can generate about 7,200 megawatts of electricity. And if developed with policies and making access low, the cost to be low, but Uganda has the smallest per capita energy consumption in sub-Saharan Africa. Much as we are talking about the global consumption of 168,515 terawatts, but only Africa has 3%. That's according to the International Energy Agency 2010. Therefore, there are opportunities we can explore in Uganda to address renewable. First, Uganda adopted the roadmap with goals and work plans to scale up renewable energy. Also, Uganda believes in increased investment in renewable energy that would improve national grid supply, boost energy security, and advance sustainable development. Therefore, with all this support of the government, I call upon the international community to increase climate financing. We are also talking about giving us good price for carbon so that with our rich biodiversity, we shall be able to address the issue of renewable. But we are also talking about debt swap because we...
Yes, please finish.
Most of the damage caused by climate change was caused by outsiders. So we are saying, can we cause a debt swap? Because that will make us to have a level ground. The high rate of deforestation is because we don't have alternatives. Therefore, these are issues that we need to address. The high interest loans, we need trade instead of loans. The dim energy, we need energy, we invest in energy, and it must reach the people, and it must be strong, reliable, and for industrial use. And also we need to invest in research and development, reliable energy infrastructure, and address replacement for renewable energy. For example, subsidies for kerosene can be used for renewable energy. These are our position, and we think if we can work together, we shall be able to scale up renewable energy in Uganda. After all, we are rich in biodiversity and we have high potential. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Biyika Songa. I think your call was very much heard with the need for international climate financing, new finance instruments, debt swaps, and supports to be able to invest further in renewable energy to use the untapped potential in Uganda. Now I would like to hand over to Honorable Samuel Unwikbo, former Member of Parliament from Nigeria and from the Climate Change Committee from Nigeria. Honorable Unwikbo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. I would like to just say a few points based on the guidance I was given. First is to say that what we are doing in Nigeria is going to be part of the whole approach that Africa intends to adopt in tackling the challenges coming from both climate change and the issue of renewable energy. For instance, in Nigeria, with a population of about 223 million people, we know that less than 40% of that has access to electricity as a whole. And we also know that we have abundant raw materials. We have sun, we have water, and we also have wind. But we've not been able to get to that point. Let me also point out that over the years, for nearly a little over 50 years now, issue of electricity remained in the exclusive list of the Constitution. But I'm happy to announce that the 9th National Assembly which I served in alongside one of my colleagues there, Honorable Bolus, we were able to amend the Constitution to remove electricity from where it was handled only by the federal government. We have not been able to push it down to the concurrent list, even to the point where local governments can get involved in it. So it's a major amendment. Following that, the Ninth Assembly was also able to pass a revolutionary Electricity Act 2023, which was assented to by our president, who recognized in his inaugural speech that electricity will become more accessible and affordable to businesses and homes alike. Power generation should nearly double and transmission and distribution networks improved. We will encourage states to develop local sources as well, unquote. So in line with that, in a few weeks after that, the law passed by the National Assembly, 9th National Assembly, was assented to by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, just a few weeks, about 2 weeks after he assumed office. So we on a path to truly revolutionize the entire process. And I know that in one of the laws, it was made explicit in one of the sections that any law passed by the state, that is to tell you that it's been further strengthened, will not be either countered by the federal, because the states have not been given authority to be able to make laws on electricity and all that, including renewable energy. So when you look at this together, you would then find that we have taken the proper step towards meeting our electricity needs, taking into consideration the contributions from renewable energy. And that is very, very, very important. Let me also add that in the whole nation, the local governments we have is 774, and we have 36 states. So this law, in line with the Climate Change Act, which by the grace of God I sponsored, which we passed in 2021, and it was assented to. They are in line because in our Climate Change Act, we also provided for these subnationals to participate in national decision-making by the council that is chaired by Mr. President. So we have now seen that this law, Electricity Act, is also in tune, it's in line with the Climate Change Act. So we are now going to be able to take advantage of our population, available materials or raw materials, and also the fact that we have a huge market. I've seen the lights, taking a different position, so I should be moving faster than before. But let me say that Nigeria has over 60% youthful population and lack of electricity access to over 40% of its estimated population of 223 million, with abundant raw materials of adequate sun.
Again, of course, you have a minute to finish.
Thank you. Of adequate sun, wind, water, etc. is ready market for investors in renewable energy. Let me conclude by advising investors, and of course this includes Nigerians. And let me digress a bit and point out the fact that in our telecommunications privatization, it is driven by an African approach, because when we called on international telecommunications firms to participate in it, they were reluctant. But it was the local, let me call it African company, the MTN, that joined forces with us and now use that position to leapfrog. So I see that this is also going to happen with our renewable energy experience. I therefore use this opportunity to invite not only the international community, but our fellow African brothers to work on this and achieve it. Let me also thank this wonderful, great parliament for affording us this opportunity to share these ideas. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you so much, Honorable Samuel Onukwu, for your insights on recent legislation in Nigeria. I would now like to hand over to Honorable Jacqueline Mongin, Member of Parliament from Uganda and Chair of APNC. So, Honorable Jacqueline, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, our moderator and honorable members present here. Already my chair of the Committee of Climate Change of Uganda, Honorable Lawrence Nsonga, has effectively talked about Uganda, and mine would be to just add a voice on what Honorable Lawrence has talked about. I would like to also emphasize on the fact that Uganda is rich in renewable energy resources, including hydrogen power, biomass, solar energy, geothermal peat, and wind. And therefore, many renewable energy resources that can be used for energy production. Although I would state here that Uganda has not yet tapped its potential in regards to this direction. Uganda has also put in place policies that could be related to championing renewable energy in the country, including Uganda adopted in 2002 different policies that could be related, including the climate change policy of 2015 and all the other policies that have been addressed by the different have been addressed differently in Uganda, including Uganda being part of the energy for all, and all the other instruments that have made Uganda to redirect its engagement in regards to promoting renewable energy. Of course, there are so many opportunities in Uganda. As you are aware, 26 million people are not yet served by power. And that gives Uganda a potential in terms of now promoting, instead of just powering Uganda, but powering going renewable as a country. It is among it's among the access deficit countries in Africa, and I think this gives Uganda a very good strategic ground in terms of promoting renewable energy. The Uganda Investment Authority in 2018, among the businesses published for attracting investors in the country, included viable projects within Uganda, including geothermal exploration, among others, and that definitely relates to renewable energy. I would like to borrow the example of Germany, and those are the countries that have done well in renewable energy, and I think Uganda is one of those countries that has the greatest actually potential. Like in my earlier speech when we were opening, I talked about the wind energy potential is very viable in Uganda. However, we still have challenges. The challenges that we have as a country, and that may not only be for Uganda, it could also be to other countries, is we are delving into using renewable energies like solar, among others, that have poor quality. So we need to build our own potential within Africa, within the country, to be able to assemble our own energy plants within the country so that we do not really rely on poor quality that is brought from the different parts of the world. It is also a potential for local entrepreneurship. So with those, a lot of things have already been talked to by Honorable Nsonga, but vocational training in this direction is very key, and emphasizing that entrepreneurs take this as a business would be a way forward in terms of championing renewable energy access for all Ugandans, but to me, I believe for all Africans that are not yet served with the renewable energy potential. I thank you.
Thank you very much. The light was not even red. Thank you for this and giving some more insights on legislation in Uganda. And I found it inspiring to see also see it as an opportunity for Uganda to promote renewables to combat energy access and the need to build an own renewable energy industry on the continent. Thank you very much. Now I would like to hand over to Honorable Zaha Al-Bassar, Member of Parliament from Egypt and Deputy Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. The floor is yours.
Thank you. For Egypt, Egypt gives a high priority for renewable energy opportunities due to the availability of the natural resources. For instance, Binban Solar Park in Aswan, it highlights the immense potential of solar power generating. Binban is one of the largest solar installations globally, consists of 41 solar power plants, with a total capacity of 1.65 gigawatts, providing electricity to more than 1.5 million households. Also, there is the Za'farana wind farm, which is along the Red Sea coast, illustrates our commitment to wind energy with over 600 megawatt of installed capacity. This project signifies the contribution and the importance of reducing the reliance on fossil fuel in Egypt. We also see the investment in projects for renewable energy as an opportunity for job creation. The construction and the ongoing maintenance of renewable energies, like, for example, the West Bakr wind farm, it employed hundreds of local workers, demonstrating the economic benefits of renewables. Moreover, in Egypt, we are actively attracting green finance. Egypt successfully secured financing for the Komombo solar plant, which provides around 200 megawatt facility located near Aswan. This kind of partnerships and this kind of work to attract green financing is also backed by government efforts and parliamentary efforts. From the government side, we had the feed-in tariff program to provide attractive incentives to renewable energy developers and private sector investments. And for parliaments, our parliament had a priority to have a policy framework for the renewable energies, and we have Egypt's renewable energy law, and with the establishment of the Egyptian Electricity Utility and Consumer Protection Regulatory Agency, we both played a vital role in providing a stable regulatory environment. And for the question of partnership regionally and internationally and how it helps us as parliamentarians, I can say that we find it very supportive in capacity building. We understand more and we learn more from our regional and international partners the regulation of electricity markets, promoting clean energy and improving the energy efficiency. Also, attending and participating in regional and international forums like, for example, IRENA, IPU, the Mediterranean Energy Regulators forums, where we meet parliamentarians like you, honorables here. We share experiences, we share best practices. Such forums help us learn more from each other and actually form a regional partnership and regulatory frameworks. In closing, Egypt is dedicated to go ahead with a renewable energy journey, and we welcome collaboration with international partners and harness the full potential of renewables, creating jobs, strengthen our infrastructure, and contribution to greener and sustainable future for everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Zaha Al-Bassar, for those insights on legislation also in Egypt regarding feed-in tariffs and an Egyptian renewable energy law, and for highlighting the need for international fora to exchange on capacity building, how to regulate markets, how to advance energy efficiency, and so on. Thank you very much. I would now like to announce the final speaker of this panel now, Honorable Senator Wahome Wamatinga, Member of Parliament in Kenya. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, moderator. Thank you very much, Session Chair. Let me take this opportunity, first of all, to congratulate us all for, first of all, taking time to sit down here and have a candid discussion of what needs to be done. Kenya enjoys 86% of renewable energy from the matrix of hydro, geothermal, solar, and biomass. However, we have a penetration rate of about 77%. This could be very deceptive because we still have not generated enough to feed our industrial development as envisaged in the Vision 2030. However, from the amount of energy that's generated, we have only about 24% being not renewable, but these cost about 70% of the amount spent on energy. I would want to maybe digress a bit and look at the PPAs, which are the major providers of energy, and look at the financing models. And I want to borrow heavily from what the speaker said. We know that most of these PPAs are financed by money borrowed from the World Bank, from other institutions, international institutions. These are pension funds from developed countries. I would want to challenge ourselves as African legislators. It is time that we remodel our pension funds. It is time that we look at our financing model so that we do not use our investments to grow foreign pensions, but we should do that to grow African pensions. I want to take an example of this country. It takes a whole 13 years for you to get a license to produce power. This is very unattractive for any pension fund that would want to invest in that sector. And therefore, my challenge to all the legislators in this House, let us relook at the laws governing some of these models so that we can use that opportunity to ensure that it is the African pensioners who benefit as opposed to the current currently considered PPAs where most of the monies are borrowed from pensions in the Western countries. My fellow legislators, we did indeed in Kenya pass a climate change amendment bill in a record 3 days in the Senate. I would want to believe we can do more for us Africans. I would also want to see us discussing more about technology exchange within African institutions, building the capacity so that we stop the over-reliance of this mentality that the Western must do it. Yes, true, the polluters must pay. But as we do that, we must also look at the practices that we can introduce in our countries so that so that the way we manage our power, the usage of power, it is done in an environmental sustainable manner. It is the responsibility of we as parliamentarians to educate, to conduct civic education, because there is a lot that we can do. We've learned in the last couple of decades, climate change has mostly affected African countries. It is the
Twafurahia fahari yetu.
Umoja ni ngao, twajivunia mila na desturi, twasherekea utamaduni wetu, unavutia amani, unavutia upendo, kibugaye achomye imerurat korenyo nyerani bete fahari wito imerurat korenyo
Mungu umeibariki nchi yetu.
imerurat korenyo nyerani bete fahari wito imerurat korenyo
Twafurahia fahari yetu.
African nations in a truly African-led agenda. We are a bit behind time due to the session before, but our honorable chair gave us until 11:50 for a bit more of discussion now. So I would like to open the floor for, let's say, 3 questions, and I would like to limit those questions to 2 minutes so that we can hear really 3 more people and give the panel a chance to react briefly to that. So I would like now the audience to raise your hand if you have questions, and please excuse if I can only take 3 questions. The first one I saw was here with the white, no, here in the second row. Yes, you can please stand up and introduce yourself, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, moderator. Good morning. Honorable Senator and Member of Parliament. My name is Cyril Siewe. I'm the head of UNEP for Kenya. I am very flattered to be part of these conversations, and he has been extremely educating to listen to the Member of Parliament. Yes, you're fully right, Honorable, to say that capacity building is very important, that we have to train, and not only academic training, but practical training. So me, from where I stand at United Nations Environment Program with other colleagues from what we call the United Nations country team in Kenya, one of the questions that could come that I would also like to invite for the deliberation is, at what cost? Let's take the example of renewable energy and green transition, since this conversation and part of this conference agenda is on green transition. The cost of electric car, which is something that will probably be debated in this August room, is it something that is sustainable for average Kenyans or East Africans? If you take the medium-sized car, which is currently being produced in Rwanda, the car goes for 70,000 USD. And if you take the average profession, which is a teacher or a medical doctor, how long it would need to put aside to be able to buy this car and be part of the energy transition? What I mean here, moderator, is how can this opportunity be also a platform to have that type of conversation and to agree as a continent and to agree as an actor, as those who set the framework, what type of enabling, what type of incentives can we put forward this conversation? We understand the pro and the cons, and therefore we create enabling environment for industry and for private sector to be part of that conversation. Thank you. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much for highlighting the need for an enabling environment and making those technologies really affordable for people on the ground. I saw back there a gentleman having a further question. Yes, please introduce yourself. You also have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coordinator. My name is Dr. Emmanuel Otala, a Member of Parliament from Uganda and the Chairperson of the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. I am not asking a question, but I want to, first of all, subscribe to the submission of my honorable colleagues from Uganda, the Honorable Lawrence Songa and the Honorable Jacqueline Amongi. But I want to raise a very fundamental issue that in Uganda, for the past 20 years, we have invested close to $20 billion in oil and gas development. And I'm happy that the conversation that we are having right now is in respect to a transition to clean energy sources. And I want to observe that the developed countries that contribute much of the carbon causing the rise in climate and overall climate changes are still continuing to invest in fossil fuel development. For the past 20 years, the developed countries have made it difficult for Uganda to develop its oil and gas. And what I'm saying is that with our investment and in view of the fact that
in view of the fact that a transition is going to take some little bit of time, I am raising a controversial issue that Uganda will continue to develop its oil and gas in view of that, unless the main polluters compensate us and tell us that yes, now with the investment that... I'm sorry, can I just finalize on that?
Just briefly conclude, please.
Thank you. If we can be given a reparation for our investments so far, because they are the ones who have made it difficult for us to get our oil out of the ground, I must say that we must strike a balance between transition and developing oil and gas. Thank you. I submit.
Thank you very much for your point on investments still going in oil and gas and this argument of needing, of striking this balance. I saw one gentleman over here. You have the floor for 2 minutes, and then we give the panel the possibility to react.
Thank you very much, Sessions Chair, and thank you very much, our Super Senator, Otieno Kajwang, for this opportunity to ask a very pertinent question. Now that we have those who pollute the environment and those who clean the environment, the West being the pollutants and the African being the lungs that clean the environment. And yesterday, our president talked about introduction of taxes, because when we depend on donation to be able to mitigate the issue of environmental pollution, then we may not go far. Where can we come in as legislative arms, either the Pan-African Parliament or East African Legislative Assembly, or even local assemblies, to be able to set laws that will enable those who pollute the environment to pay taxes for pollution, and then those taxes be used to compensate the lungs of the environment. Lastly, I want to ask another question on the issue of persons with disability and climate change. In Africa, we have approximately 100 million persons with disabilities. Crutches, wheelchairs, and other assistive devices are manufactured in factories. How can we be able to urge them, those factories, to use renewable energy? If I may just give an example, in Kenya we have 400,000 wheelchair users. Those are Kenyans sitting on a metallic worth 12 billion factory. So how can we come in to be able to use renewable energy in the manufacture of assisted devices for persons with disability? Let us not leave anybody behind. Also, persons with disability should be involved in this climate change summit. Thank you.
Thank you very much for raising those points on the need of new taxes, and also to leave no one behind, and see how also people with disabilities can be taken on board of this transition. I would now just give the panel the chance for very brief reaction, maybe 1 minute per person, and maybe you can focus on one of those issues raised in your intervention. And I would like to start with Honorable Onwikbu, since he's there in line, and then go one by one of the speakers.
Thank you very much indeed. I listened to what Dr. Otela said when he was talking about the cost, about $70,000 to acquire a vehicle or so. All I would like to say is to encourage us as a people, as a continent, because we know the disadvantages we have faced over time. For instance, I mentioned the successful
partnership or collaboration between a company from South Africa when nobody wanted to, deal with us when we were privatizing the telecommunications industry in Nigeria. It was an African company that came, and then it turned out to be a gold mine. So we can work together. The cost of telephone, 3310, they call it, was 30-something thousand, 52,000. But over time, with increased number of people purchasing, improved technology, the price just dropped. I have no doubt that that's where we're going to go as we are talking about renewable energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, very brief. The problem is when we are investing in photovoltaic, we have to spend at the beginning a lot of money, and in the operating time, it's cheaper. But how can we get this money at the beginning? That is a problem. So, for example, we are looking from the GIZ for funds that you can replace diesel by photovoltaic, and then you have at the end a benefit of it. As I said, financing systems, we are talking about result-based financing systems, because on the one side you have the big investments, on-grid investments, that's something like PPAs, and you have to make a good contract. But we are talking about decentralized solutions, and that's the problem of maintenance. And so we would like to strengthen the local market, because the big investments, they are made from foreign companies and not from the local market. So that's why we are talking about grants, we are talking about private money, and we are talking about a business case for local companies. And that's the system of result-based financing.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I thank you so much, honorable members. I still insist that the solutions must come from ourselves if we have to champion this renewable energy. And we must be the ones to know what exactly is right and copying from what those other successful countries have done. Otherwise, it is still a gap that has to be covered, and we are the people that will cover that gap. And Honorable Sankok, my colleague, raised an issue in regards to the disability. Article 21 in our constitution in Uganda talks about right, each and everyone enjoying the rights. And all our legislations, disability is mainstreamed in all acts, all bills that are adopted by Parliament and assented to by the President of Uganda. And I think this is not any different. And of course, this is a call for all of us, whenever we are championing any cause, not to leave issues of disability. Inclusion is very necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to put this very clear that sustainable management of the environment or climate is not about don't touch. Touch it so long as the benefits are more than the cost. So we have to do a lot of cost-benefit analysis, because if we say people are using firewood and charcoal, don't touch, what will they use? There is no way someone who is using firewood will jump to start using electricity. So we have to do a lot of cost-benefit analysis in our decision. Then number two, there was a mention that 2% of the Renewable Energy Fund from the global community is reaching Africa. Do you know why? Because we have an agency that is doing the credit rating based in South Africa and doing credit rating for the whole 54 countries of Africa. And so in Africa, the countries that are scoring high is only Mauritius, Botswana, and so other countries cannot get that credit from that loan from the private sector, who are told that we are still scoring below capacity. Otherwise, for us, we still recommend that we do the energy mix in Uganda and we move towards net zero. And there is still time frame up till 2050 or 2030 that we can do that. So what is the problem with generating 100% tons of greenhouse gases and absorbing it all in the sink? Thank you.
Thank you. So the final speaker in this round would be Honorable Zahra Al-Bazar from Egypt.
Thank you, and I would like to thank this opportunity for exchanging and learning from each other as parliamentarians. I stress very hard on platforms where we can share best practices, best regulations, learn from each other, and have an inclusive policy framework, platforms and opportunities where we can help each other to learn. The other thing is I also would like to emphasize the role of young people in our local communities. And as young parliamentarian, I also call for other parliamentarians to empower young people to participate and raise their awareness about the importance of renewable energies and how it's beneficial for our economies and our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have come to the end of this session. So honorable members of parliament, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen, it was an honor to moderate this session. I think we learned a lot about opportunities, legislation, obstacles of renewable energy there. We have just heard one call to emphasize the role of young people. I would like to take that and put it a bit further, and as part of global civil society, emphasize the role of civil society also. And it would be a pleasure to continue to work with you to strengthen also the bonds of parliamentarians and civil society in general. And with that, I am now closing the session and hand over to our Honorable Chair for further remarks on the continuation of this conference. Thank you very much. And maybe a big applause also to our panel. Sorry, I forgot about that.
One very burning question. One very burning question. Can I?
Senator, it must be very burning. Senator Kavindu, maybe a minute. Let it be a question, not a speech.
I'll try.
Please. And it is a very dangerous window. It's a very dangerous window that I'm opening.
Yeah, thank you. My question is, we Africans are put in a place where we are meant to be very poor. But I want to say, Africans, we are not poor, because the best diamonds come from here. God comes from here. Every good gemstone comes from here. And I'm talking of gemstones knowing what I'm talking about. Africa, if these gemstones and every wealth that we have in Africa is controlled, there is nothing we cannot do. What are we meant to do as parliamentarians to capture and to control our wealth so that we can be able to get the money, the finances that we need, because it is here in Africa, so that we can move forward with these climate and energy problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Honorable members, we still have 2 plenary sessions, and we have a tea break. And I want to just propose that we do just a 15-minute tea break. And clerk, I don't know whether we're allowed to ring the bell after the 15 minutes. And then when we come to the next session, that will be moderated by our friend from Konrad Adenauer, during the plenary we can take more questions. So, Mheshimiwa Simba, I've seen you raise your hand. We can take that at the next session. And all those who were not able to, yes, Solomon from Nigeria, we can fill those questions in the next plenary session. So we take a 15-minute break. Tea will be served as you walk out of the chamber. Is it on the left or on the right? It's on the right. We just make it quick, 15 minutes, and then we can come back and take the other questions that are still pending. Thank you.
Vipi? Hebu nieleze nielewe.
Hadi mweka mtoto chini, ama tutakosana vibaya sana mimi na wewe.
Na mwisho wa siku kama mtoto ni wa Kate, hakuna kitu utafanya. Atamchukua tu bado.
Na nyinyi hamtaniletea wenda wazimu wenu ndani ya nyumba yangu.
I am so relaxed. Hata sitaki kitu chochote kingia kati ya furaha yangu.
I know the feeling.
Ulikuwa wapi leo? Nakuuliza ulikuwa wapi?
Wewe umeingia saa hizi, nimekuuliza watoka wapi?
How could they do that to their own sister?
Elisa was only trying to help us. But look at her now.
We are going to